Hello and thanks for joining us. You just saw images from the leading international art fair dedicated to contemporary art from Africa and the African diaspora. Taking its name from the 54 countries that make up the African continent, 154 hosts 4 editions throughout the year in London, New York, Marrakesh and right now in Paris. Among the 50 artists whose work is on show here is the South African conceptual artist Kendell Geers, who joins me here in the studio. Hello, thanks for being here. And the South African photographer Soku Mayela, who joins us on Skype from Limpopo province. Hello, thanks for being here with us. Now, created in 2013, 154 is the first and only international art fair dedicated to contemporary art from Africa and its diaspora. Africa is seen as a monolith, but it has many different histories. Now, I wanted to ask you, Soko, what do you think about this African label?
I think it's wonderful that we're able to identify where the art comes from. But I think in the context of the conversations that we're fostering, I think we should find a way to be able to speak of it on a globalized scale instead of just saying it's an African thing. I think the stories that we're telling are universal, so we should be able to share that label-wise or like content-wise with the rest of the world.
Okay, well, we invited the 3 of you out of the 50 artists shown because our team loved your work. Kendell Geers, now you've been described as the enduring and entertaining bad boy of contemporary African art. Over the past 30 years, you've used a range of mediums like performance art, video, sculpture, painting and photography to confront political realities such as apartheid and global economic concerns. I wanted to start with asking you, what impact did growing up in South Africa during apartheid and the explosive politically charged landscape have on you and your work?
I think it was fundamental in preparing me to become an artist because I think I must have been 12 by the time I realized this crime against humanity was there and we were all living it. And it took a lot of courage by the age of 15 to run away from home, to run away from my family in order to join the anti-apartheid movement, to join the struggle and protest. And the tools from that is the tools that I then took into becoming an artist and challenging power structures, challenging language, challenging the way we perceive our reality.
And your work is often provocative. The F word features a lot. It's a bleepable word here on France 24, so I can't say it. But talk to us about this particular word, which is called F-face.
Well, I think, it was at some point I was so tired of people telling me that I'm not a real African because I'm white, despite the fact that my family's been living on the continent for 300 years. And I had to go about reinventing myself and took inspiration from, the Pende illness mask, which is half black and half white, because illness and healing happens in the spirit as well as in the body. And I chose the word, I had to invent a folk art for myself. And I chose that particular word because it's a magical word, and art is about magic. It's magical because it's creative and destructive. If I say F you, it's a declaration of war. If I say F me, it's a declaration of love, an invitation to make love. And I think that the way we use the word determines its outcome and transforms our perception. And that's what the power of art is, to transform perception by changing reality one perception at a time.
Soko, so just listening to what Kendell just said, what's your reaction to what he said about white Africans not being real African artists?
To be honest with you, I think it's a conversation that I haven't really had myself. I think I'm currently trying to navigate my own self as a Black South African, trying to tell stories within an African context myself. So I think Kendell has given quite an informative response that is personal to him, and I can't speak on that experience for him. I think right now my interest as a young artist is trying to figure out my place as an African artist within the continent myself, trying to rediscover my stories, my history, my heritage, and how my use of photography can actually help me uncover more of those stories and maybe try to understand how we can move forward from some of the colonial histories that we find a lot in our history and in our art. So trying to inform the next generation of Black artists or even Black children coming from the same places that I come from, to try and find solutions moving forward through the arts that I'm working through.
Okay, well, so good. Working across photography, film and text, your work focuses on social issues and human behaviour. Mental illness has been a recurring theme in your work. Talk to us about why this is an important subject to you.
Well, I think coming from South Africa, currently, the landscape in terms of conversation around mental health and mental illnesses hasn't been one that's very positive. And one could think of many reasons as to why that is. And my current interest is looking at how issues of language or the lack of language in terms of like having conversations around mental health and mental illnesses can be subverted through using visual languages like photography or any form of visual art, for example. So if I was to give you an example right now, South Africa has 11 official languages, and this is a conversation I've had while giving presentations. And of all those 11 official languages, only 2 really have a lexicon for issues of mental health and mental illnesses, and those languages are English and Afrikaans. And so you don't find words for depression or anxiety in any of the other African languages. So my approach right now is to try to use the visual arts as a visual language that does not need much interpretation verbally to kind of share information and also try to bridge the gap in communication, these issues of the mind, so we can maybe foster healthy conversations moving forward around issues of mental health and mental illnesses, and also trying to reduce stigma by creating this language in our country.
Okay, well, it's extremely interesting and important subject to talk about. The art fair gives this powerful sense of the African continent's rich diversity and shows the growing global interest in African art. We spoke to some of the visitors there.
Contemporary art, especially in Africa, is emerging a lot. There's a lot of color, and you can feel that the artists really go for it, and that's very pleasant.
I feel like contemporary African artists are more willing to work with a variety of materials, to use different processes. I find that really interesting. All these materials and colors mixing together. It's something we see a lot more in contemporary African art.
There is a real originality to the art coming from southern and sub-Saharan Africa. We're seeing the emergence of a real identity built around very strong themes such as migration and repatriation, and they're being interpreted in an exceptional way.
Those were some of the visitors at the art fair. Kendell, how important is African art in the global art market in 2022?
Well, I think on the back of the Black Lives Matter movement, there was definitely a resurgence of interest in trying to realize that a continent and the diaspora of the continent have been largely overlooked by the international art market. And it's important to focus attention on that in order to, give a voice. Because one of the most important things to understand is the difference between being able to speak and the right to speak, and the right to self-representation. And we're moving into an age now where African people can begin to define themselves and not be spoken on behalf of by colonial countries or powers.
And so during COVID, there was a real shift for art being shown and sold online. Social media has become an important platform for visibility. Are art fairs like this still as important as they were in the past?
Being able to view art in the physical space. And I think recently we had Cape Town Art Fair, and it was so full. It was so packed, like so many people coming from different parts of the world. And I think as much as it's been progressive moving the art online, I think that's the future, in fact, of where art will be showcased in terms of making it more accessible for people that cannot come to physical spaces. You really can't take away the experience that is being in the same room with the art and being able to speak to people, the social element of being able to enjoy art together. So art fair was so full, people missed that element of being around each other, speaking to each other, and engaging with the art in person. So I think that there will be a nice balance moving forward between the two.
And you've been at the art fair. Can you confirm that's right? Walking around talking to people, do you get a chance to talk to dealers? Does it make a big difference?
I don't think it's as much about the people as much as what the art brings to the people. You build the church around the faith. You build the church around the altar, not the other way around. And I think we need to center the work of art because of the power that art has to be able to speak to the world of spirit, to be able to speak to the world of imagination, and provide, I think, inspiration to deal with a lot of the very complex political issues that we have to deal with today.
And in Europe, there's been a lot of discussion about the restitution of African art that was stolen by Europeans. Recently, France returned 26 treasures looted by the French army to Benin. Do you think enough is being done to give back this work?
Absolutely not. One of the big excuses that European has in not returning works of art is that there are no museums in Africa. Well, there are no museums because the museums that had been there, or the palaces or the places where art had been preserved in the past were destroyed by the colonialists. And I think it's important to not just give the work back, but also make sure that the works go back to their rightful place within the culture and community, and educate and facilitate and actually rebuild the museums in order to. It's not just about, it's the old proverb about you can give a person a fish or teach them how to fish. Well, I think that the restitution should also go with a lot of fishing rods and knowledge.
Soku, what do you think? What more needs to be done to return Africa's stolen treasures?
Well, I think Kendell has said it quite clearly what needs to be done. We can't just reappropriate the work back to where it comes from, but there needs to be platforms where it's accessible back to the people that it was made for or made from. So we need to re-educate people of their own histories and their own cultures through those art forms, as our country literally has that history where we've spoken to each other through generations via the arts. So we need to do more than just giving it back, but we as a continent as well need to find ways to create platforms where it's accessible to the next generation.
Okay, Soku, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Kendell, thanks for joining us in the studio. The Art Fair 154 Paris takes place until the 10th of April at Christie's Galleries. We're going to leave you with a tribute and a love song to the African continent. Le Vol du Boli, or The Flight of the Boli, is a show by musician Damon Albarn and filmmaker Abderrahmane Sissoko. It's on at Paris's Châtelet Theatre from next week. Remember our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this. Hi.